I now call to order the Planning Commission meeting of August 28th, 2019. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty. Please stay standing for the statement of values.
As we gather, we humbly seek blessings upon this meeting. May we act with strength, courage, and will to perform our obligations and duties to our people with justice to all. Let us seek wisdom so that we may act in the best interest of our people, our neighbors, and our country. All this we ask so we may serve our community with fairness and respect, putting their needs before all.
You may be seated. Secretary Biagini, will you please call the roll?
Sure. Commissioner Salem? Commissioner Ikezi?
Present.
Commissioner Kelly? Here. Chair Becker?
Here.
Commissioner Jane?
Here.
Commissioner Cherukuru?
Here.
And Commissioner Biagini, me, I'm here.
Declaration of Commission Procedures. Public hearings are conducted by the chair in accordance with the following procedures. The chair and commission of the commission directs all activity during the hearings. All comments should be addressed to the commission. Any item on this agenda may be continued to a subsequent hearing. Applicants may be allotted up to 10 minutes to present and justify their proposals. Allow staff presentation of the item. Other speakers will be given up to 2 minutes, the applicant up to 5 for rebuttal and for comments. No additional comments will be accepted upon the close of the public hearing, although the commission reserves the right to direct questions to any speaker on any matter. Number 5, special procedures, time limits may be applied to any items as prescribed by the chair. And number 6, appeal of the commission actions must be filed in writing within 7 calendar days. Copies of the current agenda and staff reports for each of the items on the agenda are available from the Planning Division office on the Friday afternoon preceding the meeting and available online. A copy of the agenda packet is also located at the table near the entrance of the council chambers, right over there by the door. Continuances and exceptions. This is the part of the meeting that allows for applicants, members of the public, or other interested parties to request an item be continued without 1, continued without a hearing, 2, withdrawn, or 3, taken out of order. Are there any request applicants, the public, or the commission for a continuance or exception for any of the items on tonight's agenda?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, Commissioner Biagini.
I'd like to pull 1A, the minutes of August 14th.
And I'd like to have a question on the Saratoga project, ABC license project. Sorry, can't see. I'm just joining now.
Okay. All right, seeing those, do we just move forward on that?
I move to approve the balance of the consent calendar.
Okay.
Second.
Okay.
Can you clarify the items that were pulled? It was 1A, and what was the other one?
1B.
Never mind, I gotta upload this. Okay, cast your votes.
Oh, Commissioner Kelly, I think is going to vote by.
Yes, I am, because it's not.
Because he's. Did you join?
I did join.
Technical difficulties.
Voice vote?
Oh, it's on now.
And it passes unanimously. Okay, so everyone here for the consent calendar items, they have passed, except for the two that were pulled for discussion. Okay, so now we will move on to the consent calendar item, which is item 1B, oh, 1A, sorry, 1A, the Planning Commission meeting minutes of August 14th, 2019.
Recognizing.
Okay. Commissioner Biagini.
I have a concern about page 4, under the recommendations. The large number of amendments that were friendly amendments, I think there are some critical words left out. What I would like to do is I want to read the whole last sentence, it's rather long. But right before the ayes and the nays, where it talks about for all commercial developments greater than 20,000 square feet area, including input, I think you meant to say from, not for, form. Anyway, that's minor. A practicing architect with similar experience, blah, 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 to attend the relevant planning commission hearing. I'd like to add the words "at applicant's expense." That was a critical piece of that motion.
Okay,
Is that it?
I believe that is for that item. So is
I
there?
move that we amend the minutes reflecting the correction by
Second.
Commissioner Biagini.
Okay, so we have it moved by Commissioner Chirakuru, seconded by Commissioner Biagini.
And for clarification, that was to approve the minutes as amended?
As
As
amended,
amended, yes.
with the clarification on the condition.
Yeah, just add the words "at applicant's expense."
Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Okay, we will now move on to item 1B of the consent calendar, which is the action on use permit for the ABC license type 47 for Prune Ridge Golf Course located at 400 Saratoga Avenue. Commissioner Chirakuru.
I had a question for staff on this, on the conditions of approval. On the other ABC license, we had a condition on water and county's Department of Health being the approving agency for permits on their restaurant. Now, I didn't know if this was because it's an existing restaurant that we wouldn't require the environmental health department's permits. And again, water and sewer clearances from our building, our Public Works Department. So I just needed additional clarification on why that condition was not in this.
Excuse me, Commissioner Chirakuru, if I go to the item that got approved at the consent calendar, which is also an ABC license, and I look at the conditions of approval, you're saying there are conditions related to the county health
Yes.
as well as to water
Yeah.
that weren't in these, and you just want to understand why. So I'm just going to pull up those conditions of approval so that I have a sense
Yes,
of what
they're
we're.
consistent. So if we can add a condition related to the water, all food service projects conducting commercial cooking operations, including blah, blah, blah. And all food service projects are required to have an approved stamp from the Santa Clara County Department of Environmental Health before plans can be accepted for review.
So a potential reason for the difference between these two different projects and conditions of approval is that the China restaurant is a new restaurant that's getting built out with tenant improvements. And the Prune Ridge Golf Course is existing and is adding on an ABC license with more abilities, but isn't actually changing the food service provision. So that would be why I would think there would be a difference between those conditions.
But why would we not verify it? Why would we not verify if they have an appropriate license when it's anyway coming and they are adding, right? They're going to serve.
They may not, maybe I'll let the planner respond.
So I'm trying to see which department had that condition of approval. But on this, I think because it is an existing
Restaurant, I figured that's.
restaurant and
yeah.
use, and the use permit is only, they already serve beer and wine, and the only reason they're here is to be able to serve hard liquor.
Yeah.
So type 47. So I think all the licenses, that's what I'm thinking, and I'm gonna look that up, like which department had that condition, but that's what I'm thinking, that since this is an existing use and they're not really changing anything,
I would think
as
that
such.
it'll still be triggered,
So it
but
is
go ahead and,
okay.
if you can provide.
I think the difference as well is that the Prune Ridge Golf Course proposal would not be coming in for any building permit review. This is just for an ABC license, whereas for instance, the iChina tenant improvement would be coming in for building permit, which would trigger these additional considerations.
So irrespective of the minor changes that they're going to be doing interiors to add, they won't be coming in for building permits? The condition 1 is coming for building permits.
Yeah, so they are proposing some minor tenant improvements, so for which they would require a
Right.
building permit, but
Includes
that condition,
plumbing too, right?
that condition that you're referring to is from the water department, but it seems they did not have that condition
Okay.
on this project.
Just curious why it wasn't, and maybe some additional clarification from that unit, because I would think that it does trigger it, but.
We can go back and ask, and if it's appropriate, we will certainly add the condition, but we'll go back to water and
Okay.
check on that.
Perfect. Thank you so much for clarification. That's it through the chair.
Okay. Do we have a motion to?
So what would be the motion? Should we?
Could I have a question too, please?
Sure. Commissioner Salim, sorry about that.
I just wanted to double check, is the wording of the permit such that it's limited to the restaurant and the surrounding patio, but not on the course itself, right? They're not going to serve alcohol on the course?
No, so they are permitted to serve, they are currently the type 41 license. In the past, they have been allowed to serve it on the course itself also. And so this property was actually annexed by the city, and it was allowed to use this, sell this alcohol service, continue to have this alcohol service on the property after it was annexed without requiring a use permit. And later in 2007, when they wanted to check, staff verified and checked and confirmed that it would be okay for them to serve alcohol within the premises of the fenced area. Because it's very common on the golf courses to be, it's
Yeah.
okay, and I checked with, we checked with the ABC office also, and it is okay for them to serve alcohol from the beverage cart. As long as it is being served from a beverage cart, it is okay.
Interesting, okay, thank you.
Just to clarify.
Commissioner Chirka?
Through the chair. So this is actually what we call a grandfathered use permit, right? Through the PD annexation?
So the sale of, or the activity of alcohol sales for beer and wine was something that was part of an activity that was done before the city did annex the golf course. We concluded that research.
Right, so
They
that's-
are intensifying that activity, which is prompting them to get the use permit because now they're also adding distilled spirits into the mix.
Yeah, which is one of the reasons why I brought up, because prior, it's a grandfathered permit. Nobody knows if they actually got all the relevant permits, but as it comes up for a new expansion, this is our opportunity to make sure they currently abide by all the requirements, which in this case, they may just have to submit proof of an environmental health permit already active, but just to make note that that is a would be a condition of approval. So the motion I would recommend is to add a condition of approval to comply with the city's water, Public Works Department, and also county's Department of Health permitting requirements.
Okay. Will there be a second for that motion?
Second.
Okay. So we have the motion made by Commissioner Cherukuru. We have it seconded by Commissioner Biagini, and that was to approve with the condition, which was the city water. Sorry, can you repeat that again for the record?
Condition from the Water Department, County Department of Environmental Health permits.
Okay.
Commissioner Cherukuru, I'm just going to that condition of approval because I want to make sure we capture this accurately.
Yeah.
Can you refer to which condition in the iChina report is the county health approval? Because I'm not finding that offhand.
It's it's showing as page 2 and 2 of that item, but water W1,
Yes, I got that.
all food services, and under that, the second point is
Oh,
all food
within
service.
that same condition. Okay, thank you.
So just repeat of that condition would be.
All right. Go and cast your votes. And that passes unanimously. Okay. Now I'll be moving on to public presentations. Are there any members of the public that would like to briefly address the commission on any item not on the agenda tonight? Okay. Seeing none, we will now move on to public hearing. Moving to the public hearing items, we will now hear item 19721, action on appeal from the Architectural Committee, adoption of a mitigated negative declaration of approval of a data center project located at 1150 Walsh Avenue. This project, myself and Commissioner Kelly heard this before the Architectural Review Committee, and therefore I will be abstaining and he will be abstaining himself. And therefore, Vice Chair Salam will be filling in as chair for this item.
So since I don't have the technical help of pressing buttons for a request for speaking, I will probably poll the committee or the commission, and then we'll go from there. Stereo. So public hearings will be conducted in the following manner. After the secretary or chair reads the title of each public hearing item, I will ask for the presentation from staff, and we are at that point. So I'm looking for the staff presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. The item before us is an appeal of an architectural committee action that occurred on, June 19th, 2019, where the architectural committee reviewed our new data center project located at 1150 Walsh Avenue. Following presentation and public comment, the Architectural Committee adopted a mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program, and approved the architectural review of a 4-story, 160,450 square foot data center with backup diesel generators, substation, and site improvements. This is the project site located 1150 Walsh Avenue. It's 3.32 acres. It's in the heavy industrial general plan designation, located in the industrial sector north of the Caltrain line. It is zoned heavy industrial. It's developed with 3 single-story industrial buildings that total approximately 37,443 square feet. It was previously occupied by auto body uses. It's now, as you see, vacant and the site secured. It's surrounded by a mix of commercial office and warehouse uses. This is the site plan. I'll try to be brief. The applicant is here this evening to elaborate on the project in their presentation. Again, it is construction of a new data center, so it involves all the demolition of the existing improvements. An electric substation, the diesel generators. It does have 40 parking spaces on the site, bicycle storage, and racks. The bicycle storage is located within the building, racks out on the exterior near the entry. The project does include a complete street frontage design. So it'll have the 4-foot landscape strip and with tree planting, vegetation, and then a 5-foot sidewalk behind. A new curb cut and enhancements to the existing driveway, so to improve site circulation and delivery of materials on the site. It does include 6,000 square feet of office space, which would accommodate up to 40 employees, 30 of which would be on site during the day, 10 during the evening. Again, the parking is sufficient for the site. It is parked at the data center standard of 1 to 4,000, so that is the 40 parking spaces. It does include 4 EV stalls. And the substation would be served from the adjacent property for maintenance by SVP on SVP's property. These are the elevations. It is a 4-story structure. At roof height, it's 71 feet 4 inches. It did receive a zoning administrator approval for a modification to increase the building height. At its peak, it's 93 feet and 2 inches, and that is not accounted for in building height for the purposes of development standards. Roof screening is not assimilated in the building height for development standard purposes. It does have, it is to be constructed steel, and it does have exterior building materials that are textured. Includes glass panels, ribbed perforated flat metal panels into the design, and the roof screen that I referenced previously. And these are the remaining elevations of the building. And it's to be constructed in 2 phases, the first being the data center, and then phase 2 being the substation. So the project, and MND was prepared for the project, and it was prepared and circulated in accordance with CEQA. The city received 5 comment letters, responses of which were prepared and provided in written format to the Architectural Committee for consideration. Mitigation measures were also prepared to reduce the identified potential impacts to less than significant. Before the Architectural Committee meeting on June 19th, a letter was presented by Adams, Broadwell, Joseph, and Cardoza on behalf of California Unions for Reliable Energy for consideration by the Architectural Committee. This comment letter claimed that there were deficiencies in the scope of the analysis, inadequacies in the assessment of air quality, battery use, and GHG impacts, and asserted that there was not substantial evidence to make the architectural findings to approve the project, and requested that an EIR be prepared. Assistant City Attorney Abby and Brianna Bohanic of Circle Point responded to the comments presented in the letter, following which the Architectural Committee reviewed the project and considered the evidence presented and adopted the MND and MMRP and approved architectural review of the project. Adams, Broadwell, Joseph, and Cardozo subsequently filed an appeal. The appeal was on behalf of Californians Unions for Reliable Energy. It was presented to the city in accordance with the ordinance requirements for appeals, and it primarily focused on the mitigated negative declaration and the comments that were presented in the responses to comments on the MND during the 30-day period, as well as the comments presented at Architectural Committee, which were that there are deficiencies in the scope of the analysis, again, deferment and mitigation measures, and inadequacies in the analysis of the air quality, battery use, greenhouse gas impacts, and again, that there's insufficient evidence to support the architectural review of the project. The city did, the environmental consultants prepared responses to those comments. Those comments are available on the city's website and noted as part of the staff report and made available to the public for review. The city's position is that the approval would secure the purpose of the intent of the city's zoning ordinance and general plan. The data center is a permitted use in the NL zoning district. The summary of the responses to the comments found that there are no changes to the conclusions in the MND. The MND and MMRP conform to the requirements of CEQA and that no further environmental analysis is required. As stated in the MND, all impacts associated with the proposed project are less than significant with mitigation incorporated. Therefore, no additional mitigation measures are required. Staff's recommendation is to deny the appeal and uphold the Architectural Committee's adoption of the MND and MMRP, and to deny the appeal and uphold the Architectural Committee's approval of the data center project. Prior to Planning Commission this evening, we did receive another comment letter from Adams, Broadwell, Joseph, and Cardozo. Letter was provided to you on the dais prior to this meeting, and we have the Assistant City Attorney and our environmental consultant, Brianna Bohonic, to respond to those comments.
And I would just suggest that if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them, but we're likely to get additional comments from the appellant during the public comment period, so perhaps it would be more worthwhile to defer my response to the letter until after we receive that public testimony.
That's okay.
But I'm also available to answer questions now as well, if you prefer.
And we have, again, from the SV1 Data Center team, Michael Downey will be doing the presentation for the applicant. So if you have any questions for me.
I do.
Okay.
Well, this is actually unrelated to the MND, but I've seen a lot of these data centers in Santa Clara, and they're just big blank boxes. They're disgusting. They're just so ugly. And when I look at this picture of this one, it's just one big white plane that is not interesting. And, you know, when I look at other projects, like if you look at Valley Fair, they have that metal that has been perforated with artistic patterns on it. Or if you look at the new transit center in San Francisco, they have the same thing, big panels that have art perforated into it. And I'm just wondering why we continue to allow, we have so many data centers in Santa Clara and they're just all ugly. I don't get it. I don't understand why we allow this to happen to our city.
Commissioner Kesey?
Oh, nobody's responding to Commissioner James' question?
No, I had nothing. I can't disagree with it, so I can't.
Okay. My question is, California Unions for Reliable Energy has, who are they, and have they filed similar appeal on other projects in the city?
Perhaps your comment is more appropriately directed to the applicant, the appellant when they provide their testimony. But yes, they have provided similar comments on many other city projects.
Okay.
And this law firm has as well. They're well known to the city. They are the foremost requester of public records for the city of Santa Clara,
What kind of records?
and inevitably environmental documents and all documents related to the development of a project.
I see. Thank you.
We have gotten numerous requests from them on this project alone.
I see. Thank you.
I have a question through the chair.
Actually, Commissioner Biagini first, and then Chair Kugler.
Bobby, I don't know if this is better asked now or later, and I'm sure you'll tell me. So here's my question. I don't know who CURE is either. I assume it's at a state level and not a local level, especially when I read the attorneys are from South San Francisco, not South Bay Area. But here's my question. They raised some points that I can't argue with in terms of environmental impact. And I know there's an awful lot of paper on this that I tried my best to go through. But a couple of questions. One, initially, there was an appeal from Native American Heritage Commission, Valley Water, Better Neighborhoods, Robert and Rob Simpson. I'm assuming because they didn't appeal again, that either something changed that resolved their issue, or they just decided not to pursue. Is it one or the other?
Well, to clarify, there's been only one appeal
Oh,
for
okay.
this project, and that was filed by CURE,
Sure,
represented by Adams Broadwell. I think what you're referring to is when the environmental document came out, we received comments from
yeah.
several different groups, one of which, the ones that you just named. So it wasn't that they were appealing the project, it's that they were submitting comments on the environmental document. All of those comments were responded to in writing, and those are in your packet.
Okay, so their questions were answered.
We believe they were. They
Well,
did not.
otherwise they would have appealed, I
They
would
did
think.
not appeal. They did not appear at the hearing.
right, so then
at the Architecture Committee.
My next question is maybe a little more difficult to answer. I mean, I'm reading their letter from today. Further analysis, city conduct further analysis on potentially significant environmental impacts. That's a concern to me too. But with the city making that kind of analysis and conducting that type of analysis, I'm trying to think of the best way to ask this. What's the harm? Delay, costs? What is the harm to do some further analysis?
Delay and cost.
All right, we
You are
talking
correct. It would mean a significant delay in this project and a significant cost to the applicant to do a full-fledged environmental impact report. I mean, you're talking about
Another EIR?
many, yeah, that would be the only avenue. You would have to do an EIR, which itself would take probably months to prepare. It would have to then be circulated for 45 days. There'd then have to be a response period, and then we'd issue a final EIR. So, you'd be delaying the project by
Talking
at
at
least
6 months or more?
Yes.
And the cost
exactly.
exceeding?
The environmental consultant can opine on that better than I can. An average
Okay.
EIR will cost six
I can
figures,
help
though.
address some of those questions as part of the discussion later, Nancy.
Okay, good, yeah, because that's my concern. What's the harm?
And, quite frankly, the city takes CEQA very seriously. We spend an enormous amount of time on our CEQA documents, and we take comments seriously. We pay particular attention, when we get comments from the Sierra Club, from environmental groups. The comments from labor unions some of them are very helpful. Other times, we will get comments, and then a project labor agreement will be reached with the labor unions, and then their environmental comments are suddenly no longer concerns. So I make
Well, that
no
may be
value judgment
included.
as to which
Okay.
situation it is here, but just bear that in mind when you're considering whether to delay a project by 6
I
months.
understand, but I also recognize that labor unions have a concern about environment because it would directly affect those working on a project besides the neighborhoods.
Certainly.
But I do understand what you're saying, and one would wish that issues like PLAs would be dealt with prior to having to go to what one might consider extraneous lengths in order to reach the kind of agreement that should have been reached a whole lot earlier. So thank you for your comments. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Chercaro.
So I have more a question on the permits that may be required subsequent to this. Is this project going to have to go either to Bay Area Air Quality Management District for the emergency generator permits? And two, does it also need to go to the Energy Commission for a potential small project exemption? So it is not subject to the California Energy Commission's requirements for backup?
No, it's below the threshold.
Say that again?
It's below the threshold for going to the CEC.
So it's less than 50 megawatts of power? Okay, and that's for the 11 backup diesel generators?
For BAA QMD.
So, no, in the project scope, it's 11 backup diesel generators, correct? Okay. And just to clarify some of Commissioner Sads, but we can go after our discussion as well. I'll save my comments on the actuals. All right.
Are there any other secondary comments before we go to the applicant presentation?
Yeah, I think I
Commissioner
have
Biagini.
one more, and maybe I need a better understanding of what this means. On the conditions of approval, C5, developer shall prepare and submit a geotechnical hazards investigation report. That kind of sounds like environmental. Am I incorrect on that? I'd like to be schooled on it. C5 under the conditions of approval,
Can I help answer?
or is
On the
that something you
geotech?
can answer?
Yeah, the geotech study?
Yeah.
It's part of a building permit submittal process when you have to basically give the soil conditions assessment on the type of foundations that would
Got
be
it.
required. It's not per se an environmental issue.
It's a soil issue.
It's a soil and the
Okay.
structural requirements subsequent to the soil condition.
And then if we approve this tonight, it goes, what's the next step?
There's a 7-day period to appeal this decision to the city council.
Okay.
If there is no appeal, it becomes a final decision.
Got it.
And they're done at the city level, except getting building permits.
Doing the things
grading
that are in the
permits.
conditions of approval. Got it. Okay, thank you. That's it for now.
So I think it's appropriate now to move on to the applicant's presentation. I'm sorry, the appellant's presentation. So I think there's 10 minutes on the clock for that, right? 10 minutes on the clock for that.
Helen.
Michael Downey? Downey?
No, Adams Broadwell. Is there, we're,
I have two cards. Sorry. Eh, 10 minutes?
I don't
Can,
think
can
your
you
mic
turn
is
on the mic?
Press-
No, it'll have a little red.
There you go.
Here we go. All right, members of the commission,
Clock.
Yeah, we'll reset it.
start.
hi, my name is Aaron Messing, and I represent the California Unions for Reliable Energy, whose members live, recreate, work, and raise their families in the city of Santa Clara and in Santa Clara County. This appeal concerns the Raging Wire SV1 data center, which was recently approved by the Santa Clara Architectural Committee. What's relevant to my comments for this project is that it is a 4-story building which will use up to 22 megawatts of power a day. It has 11 backup diesel generators supplying capable of supplying 33.5 megawatts of backup power, and lithium batteries capable of supplying 16 megawatts of backup power. The project will take 26 months to construct. The city prepared a mitigated negative declaration for this project. However, the law requires that when any substantial evidence shows that a project might have a significant environmental impact, an environmental impact report must be prepared. In our comments to the Architectural Committee and to this commission, we show that the proposed project has the potential to cause significant environmental impacts for, among others, two primary reasons that I will summarize tonight. First, the project will release significant levels of nitrogen oxides, called NOx, during operation and maintenance of the facility. Under California law, this impact alone requires the city to prepare an environmental impact report to fully disclose, analyze, and mitigate the NOx emissions to below a level of significance. The city's own response to our comments that the backup generators have the potential to emit approximately 51 pounds of nitrogen oxide per day, just below, they say, the significance threshold of 54 pounds per day. The city seems to have not considered this in conjunction with the fact that the facility will use off-site generated electricity from Silicon Valley Power, which as of 2018 maintained a 34% mix of natural gas for non-residential customers. I should note that state law requires the city to consider the emissions from the project's electricity use. Considering these two items in tandem, the project's total emissions are significantly higher than those projected by the city, and certainly pushes the project's emissions to above the 54 pounds per day significance threshold, which triggers the requirement to prepare an EIR that fully discloses and mitigates this significant impact. In addition, the city underestimated the average commute time of those working at the facility, claiming that only a 4-mile one-way commute, which was simply the default input. The emission calculation was not based on any actual data. This is in spite of the fact that the city is aware that the average commute length is at least 25 minutes for a one-way commute. A longer commute time increases the emissions that contribute to the overall NOx emissions and causes them to be greater than that which was disclosed by the city, and this pushes them above the significance threshold. Therefore, substantial evidence supports a fair argument that the project may result in a potentially significant impact, requiring the city to prepare an EIR. The second issue I'm going to talk about is that the project may cause significant unmitigated safety impacts on workers and the public from the batteries that will be used at the project. The city failed to disclose any information about the batteries that would serve the facility, explain how the batteries would be used, or estimate any impacts from the transport, use, and ultimate disposal of the batteries. These batteries, lithium-ion batteries, have the potential and have actually caused major fires in the United States and abroad that are hard to predict and notoriously difficult to suppress. The city has simply not provided the public with information to show that a significant battery fire would be sufficiently prevented. Instead, the city states only that a fire would be adequately contained, citing assurances from the Santa Clara Fire Department and assurances from the applicant that were apparently not disclosed at the time the project was approved by the city. Regardless, we provided substantial evidence based on actual battery fires that even experienced and trained fire departments have not been enough to prevent injury from these fires. Workers and first responders are likely to be the first in line to be impacted by these fires, and next, the surrounding public. And it is the city's responsibility to acknowledge, analyze, and mitigate these impacts before they occur. In sum, substantial evidence shows that significant environmental impacts may result from the construction and operation of this project. We urge the Commission to uphold our appeal, reverse the Architectural Committee's decision to adopt the mitigated negative declaration, and their decision to approve the architectural approval for this project. And finally, we request the city direct staff to conduct further analysis on the project's potentially significant impacts, environmental impacts, and identify feasible mitigation measures to reduce these impacts to, in an EIR that is circulated to the public for review. Thank you.
Questions? Commissioner Biagini first, and then Commissioner Jane.
Hi there. So now I know who CURE is, or at least their representative. I understand the dangers of working around batteries. I get that, but my interest is rather piqued right now. Is there a PLA on this?
Is there? I'm here to speak about the environmental issues.
I understand. Do you know?
We are discussing what community benefits this project is offering to the community.
which would mean like employment?
Hiring local labor forces, hiring veterans,
That's the
paying
kind
area
of thing
wage.
for PLA. There's a reason I'm asking, because I'd like to see this whole issue get resolved and the project move forward. So I think you've answered as best you can. Thank you.
Commissioner Jane?
Yes, so it seems to me that um, you're stating that the significant impacts that are not mitigated are the NOx emissions and the lithium-ion batteries. And you're only looking at NOx emissions while the backup generators are running.
That's
And-
true.
And if you look at the reliability of Santa Clara Power, those those backup generators will basically never run. They will only be running during standard maintenance times when you have to start them periodically to be able to make sure that they still work. And then when you have a big outage. And if we had a big power outage in the city, we would have thousands of generators running in the city to provide electricity for every house and everything. So everyone has these really nasty backup generators. And then for you to consider the emissions from commuters that are coming to this facility, there are, how many employees are there? 30 employees or
They
something?
said there was 40.
40, okay. We just looked at an iChina restaurant, which will have 75 to 150 employees. Do you suggest that we have a full EIR for every restaurant that has more than 40 employees to consider the emissions for the commute of those employees?
So I'm not so the argument that we're having is over the calculation that was put into a model. This model is a California standard, and the number that they used was a default number. This is a standard practice in California to analyze commuters. Sorry.
I understand, but I don't believe that there will be significant NOx emissions over time because if you look at the reliability of Santa Clara Power, it's extremely reliable. The only time those generators would run is if we had a massive earthquake, and then we'd have other problems. So then the second thing is with the lithium-ion batteries. I believe that you're saying that hazardous materials impacts can be significant during battery transport, use, disposal, and that lithium-ion battery fires are extremely dangerous. Do you have a cell phone? Do you have a cell phone?
I do.
What kind of battery is in your cell phone?
If it's I'm actually not sure.
It's a lithium-ion battery. Do you have a laptop?
I do.
It has a lithium-ion battery.
Mm.
I have an electric car. It has a lithium-ion battery. Teslas have a 60 kilowatt-hour lithium-ion battery. There are 300,000 Teslas running around. So if you believe that the transport of these batteries is such a problem, then we should not be having electric cars. We should not be having cell phone batteries with lithium ions. And then for you to claim that the ISMND did not even mention the NFPA 855, do you recommend that an ISMND look at every technical report ever written on lithium-ion batteries?
I believe I'm not sure if that's a rhetorical question.
I'm curious as to how much should be in the ISMND.
I think sufficient information
Well-
that would inform the public. There's actually not much information in the ISMND about the lithium-ion batteries.
Are the
to
lithium-ion
begin with.
batteries UL approved?
I'm sorry?
Are the lithium-ion batteries UL approved?
They haven't selected the lithium-ion batteries they're going to use in this project, which is one of our concerns.
See, presumably they would be UL improved, right? And they would be approved by the fire marshal of the city of Santa Clara?
I would assume so.
Yeah, so I'm kind of surprised that you're claiming that these are so hazardous when you have one in your pocket.
If I might just respond, I
Okay.
mean, I think that the magnitude of the size of the batteries at these facilities are much bigger than the ones in my pocket or And I'm also not making up that these do cause significant fires that are incredibly difficult to suppress. And we, to both of your comments on the NOx and the batteries, I'm not as eloquent as the expert that we've that has provided comments that we provided below, and in conjunction with this appeal. So if you do have questions, Dr. Fox speaks to the dangers of these lithium-ion batteries, and not that they
I
should never
understand
be
there were,
used.
there
but-
were hundreds of pages on lithium-ion batteries in our packet, and there's lots of reports in there, and I think it's unreasonable to expect that every report ever issued on lithium-ion batteries be included in the ISMND.
That is not my position. That is not our position. We simply ask that the city analyze it at all,
Okay.
and we don't feel that they have.
Thank you.
I think I'm going to go to Commissioner Casey first, and then we'll go down. Sure, Carol?
I heard that from the staff that your firm has filed many appeals on this type of project. We have a lot of data centers. We've approved many data centers in Santa Clara in the past. So can you tell us what California Unions for Reliable Energy organization is?
So the California Unions for Reliable Energy is a coalition of labor organizations and individuals concerned about this project and many other projects in Santa Clara, and bringing these concerns to the attention of the city. CURE advocates for sustainable development projects in the city of Santa Clara and elsewhere to minimize environmental and public health impacts and provide community benefits. Including the advancement of a safe and skilled construction workforce.
Thank you. And we've approved many projects without EIR in the past. So what makes this project different from other data centers?
We believe, I can't speak to other data centers, but I can say that that our analysis on this project has led us to believe that an EIR should be prepared for the reasons that I described.
I've seen other lawyers from your firm in front of us, in front of this commission, and I guess the appeals have been turned down. I guess what I'm trying to say is, why do you keep doing this?
Well, I do. Well, so I'm an environmentalist. I believe in the protection of the environment, and I believe in CEQA and its capacity for good in California. And I am simply following where the facts are taking me, and I believe that's what we do.
On other projects, other data center projects, the previously approved data center projects where California Unions for Reliable Energy have been appellant, has the union managed to get a project labor agreement with the developer in the end, or
I'm sorry, in the last project?
in earlier projects?
I can't speak to that. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Cherukuru?
So let me put this in perspective. I think the last project recently that we approved at Santa Clara, Data Center Phase 2, 176,000 square feet off of Reed Avenue, that had 32 backup generators, and it generated 72 megawatts. This in comparison is 11, and it's way below still in the ROX, ROG and NOx levels. If you put cumulative also, it's 10 tons per year that it could, and this massive project has only generated 0.36 tons. So we're talking, again, I second every one of comments. He almost stole all my research out, but there is no CEQA and EIR, this is to address, is where you can prove based on substantial evidence that there is significant adverse impact. And I don't believe your research has yielded that. EIR, the CEQA litigation, has been used, abused left, right, center to stall every project, and the state is almost at the brink of revamping how CEQA processes are done. I work in CEQA every day of my life, even today, so I know. I know the history and what is necessary. Almost when the lead agency has determined the project and the adverse impacts are mitigatable, that's the lead agency's jurisdiction and authority to do so. Once it's approved, yes, there are other permitting agencies that are also looking out for environmental. Bay Area Air Quality Management, which is the approved entity, regional, California state regional entity, that is basically tasked with keeping the environmental quality. So this will go to them for permits as well, and that's where they're going to look at the actual impact thresholds in terms of what is necessary in the equipment. So that said, yes, we've approved across, and data centers are going to be more of a need. If you're running a laptop and you have a cell phone and your operations are cloud-based, guess what the future is cloud. And guess what Amazon needs? Guess what everyone needs today is data centers. So they're going to be projects more and more. To Commissioner Jane's comments, beauty lies in the eyes of the person beholding it. To me, that's a modernistic. It looks much better than other data centers that I've seen in the area. Who knows how our children will perceive it, though? But from an actual physical layout standpoint, because I'm in that industry as well, where we need to consider, yes, you can scale it, you can do walls, but there's also additional ramifications based on just the layout and how we can, formulate data centers. They're really crates. Yes, you can make them look nice, but it's still lipstick on a pig in the end. But so with that, I'll close my comments to the.
All right. I think the next step is to open for public comment.
The developer actually now gets 10 minutes. It's a little
Put it on the
unusual
list.
because it's
All right, so,
an appeal.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, applicant's turn.
Good evening. My name is Michael Downey. I'm with Gensler Architects. I am representing Raging Wire, who is developing this data center. I can see that we have a talented group of people who know their business. And I see a challenge in trying to create a data center that hopefully is appealing for the city. I know we've been working for 2 years with the city of Santa Clara to develop a data center that would work for our client and also for the city. What you see here is a 4-story building, as Debbie has already presented in many of her slides. 4-story building that consists of 3 top floors of the co-location data center usage, the lower level being office area, facilities, and electrical battery areas. Some points, many of these we've already gone over. It's 160,450 square foot building. I think the key here is what makes this building different, other than, of course, it has a different look and it's specific to what Raging Wire wants to implement in the city, is the fact that this is a seismically based isolated building. It'll be the first data center in the city to do so. The site plan, while Debbie's presentation showed it pretty well, is there a pointer in this as well? Is there a pointer at all? Okay, so on the left side, which is west, is where the substation is located from SVP. What we have is a 26-foot wide roadway, fireway that runs around the entire building for the fire department. It's a secured facility where you see on the top part, north side, which is the Wall Street side, where public would be coming and parking. Security gates are just to the right and to the left below that area. And It does have a pointer. Top button, okay. Will that pointer also show up on everyone else's? Okay, thank you.
You'll have to point it at that one. Oh, anyone?
Okay. So
There we go.
gate here, the back area down here is the private area for employees. The generator yard is located at this location, shipping and receiving at this location. Along the east side, the main view from the city or for people traveling here would be this corner, which was the view that you saw previously. So I don't know how well you are knowledged in base isolation. I know I've learned a lot on this project, but this shows a plan where we have the entire building on base isolation, including the generator yard itself, right here. Total of 50 base isolators. The intent of the base isolator is to allow the earth to move in a seismic event, and we're talking large seismic events, so that the building is able to stay pretty much constant while the earth moves back and forth with little damage to the building. Now, when we did analysis of this building, which is a heavy building, it's made of concrete and steel, we end up adding viscous dampers, which is shown here in the lower center image, which helps reduce the amount of drift that the building will make in a right, left, up and down movement. But we still have 32 inches of movement of the building in this case. And you can see that there's a gray area around the outside of the building that represents a walkable covered area over the gap between the building and the site around it. And while these aren't images of our building itself, these are images of a similar type of facility where we have to look at things like security gates, where we have to allow complete movement of the elements, including power coming into the site. So in this case, the lower portion of where you see these cables, they're mounted to the ground. And that is the part that's moving while the building itself is stagnant. So we have to allow that movement there. Quickly, the ground floor, the cream colored area is the office component. Main entrance is separating the area there below, just below the office area. The electrical rooms are just below the main reception, with the area in blue being the battery areas that were discussed earlier. Now, these battery rooms, when we first started the project, was under a code that has changed. These are going to be one of the few or newer data centers that were built a different level. These are 2-hour rated. We have fully sprinkled building. We have early detection in this area. The wall along the perimeter of the building is concrete block in that location. Floors 2 through 4 are very similar. We have a data hall that runs down the middle of the space that have equipment racks. They are contained so that we have cold and hot aisles so that there's not a mixing of air to keep efficiencies as much as possible. The cooling comes from the areas that's kind of shown in a light purple on each side that push the air into the data hall, and it's returned back up through the containment back up to the ceiling that goes back to the equipment. The rooftop are rooftop chillers, which are surrounded by, it's on a platform, so it's above the roof itself. And the enclosure around the rooftop chillers is both aesthetic to conceal the equipment, but it's also acoustic to make sure that we comply with the acoustic requirements of the property lines. Now, I don't know why architects continually like to do axonometrics, because no one really sees these in these positions, but this is a view from the southeast side. It's kind of the facility side. You see the generator area here with a wall, acoustic metal panel wall and acoustic louvers in it. The shipping, receiving, and the trash area with a cover from invisible from the front of the building itself. This is an axon from basically the same view you saw at the very beginning, little higher, you're seeing the equipment, you're starting to see the different areas. We have the ribbed metal panels here and here. We have concrete block along the lower level. We have fixed solid panels there and here that are colored, and perforated metal panels here in the center that also articulate the area of office down below. Of course, glass for the office area, and the very front we have cast in place concrete, which leads us to, this is a view as you would enter the shipping and receiving area. The concrete wall here is also where we have a sign for Raging Wire, the address of the building. Trucks enter here. As you can see, this concrete wall conceals the shipping and receiving area, conceals the trash, and you can see the generator enclosure beyond. And the last image to hopefully convey to you that it's not just an ugly data center box is the view at sunset for our project. Thank you.
Any questions? Oh, Biagini, Commissioner Biagini got her hand up first.
You're the architect, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, with respect to the, well, first let me say that I appreciate all the technical information you've provided about the workings of the building and the like. But with respect to the aesthetics, yeah, I think it is better than most. And I do like the evening look to it. But I have to wonder if there's some sort of generally accepted architectural standard that says data centers cannot be beautiful. Because I also agree with Commissioner Jane that it's just kind of ugly, okay? But it's not as ugly as a lot. I just wanted to make that comment, okay? And then my second comment, and I'm not sure you are the right person to ask this. Perhaps there is somebody else with the team here that is, I'm not sure. But I want to address what I'm going to call the elephant in the room.
Okay.
I suspect a PLA is probably the reason why the lack of a PLA is why, I'm trying to think of the best way to say that, is why there is some elevation perhaps of environmental concerns because there isn't a PLA. So my question is that being worked on? And if not, why not? Because I think if that gets resolved, a whole lot else gets a whole lot simpler. Are you the right one to ask that
So
question?
you're absolutely correct. I am definitely not the right person
Okay.
to talk to that.
Is there somebody else here tonight that is? Because that is a concern of mine. Let's take care of those things that tend to trip us up.
Good evening, Vice Chair, Commissioner. I'm Murray Feldman with Holland and Hart and one of the attorneys working with Raging Wire on this project. And I, like my colleague from Adams Broadwell, are more focused on the environmental issues, but I do know that they are also, Raging Wire is working both with inside and outside counsel with the Adams Broadwell firm and the attorneys for Cure to try to negotiate the elements of a project labor agreement. And they're working on it. They're, I don't know the exact status of it, but they indicated they're narrowing down the issue. So it is being addressed and ideally may be resolved soon.
I will tell you, I think it really should be, because I think we'd stop wasting a whole lot of time if they could get that PLA done and settled. So if you could
Take that message
convey
back.
that to the attorneys working on it, I would appreciate it personally. Thank you.
I will, Commissioner.
Okay, no, it's Commissioner Jane, then I'm going to get a word in, and then Commissioner Casey.
Yeah, my question is directed to Michael. Gensler is a very well-respected architectural firm that does massive projects.
Correct.
And I can't believe that you're putting your name on this building.
That's a tough one to respond to. We are a very reputable company, and we do some really great projects. Um, Understanding the complexities of the data centers, we've done probably 500 or more ground-up facilities around the world. And each location has its challenges. This site was long, narrow site for us to get in the size of a building that is needed for it to make any sense for Raging Wire to build a facility like this. We also are working with a lot of their standards in place, which I think that we did a very good job of hitting an elegant building while it's still a rectangle. It doesn't come across as a rectangle. We've tried to break up the spaces as much as possible on the facades. We tried to use materials that are at least a palette that is something that is in the surrounding areas, but at the same time, something that is also in the palette of what data centers do. So I'm sorry that you feel that way. I think Raging Wire has felt that this was a very special building for them. And that's all I can say about that.
Okay.
I have another question.
Hope it's easier.
So one of the issues related to the generators, running the generators, are that if we had a massive earthquake and we lost power for several days, the generators would be running. Does this data center have a fail-safe switchover facility elsewhere in the country that they could switch over all the data and compute within few hours?
I wouldn't want to surmise. That would be really Raging Wire to comment. I'm not sure why we'd want to switch it from here. I think that the reality is if there was a earthquake type of event, this is a building that will be up and running. Now, if power to this property is lost, and we have no ability to obtain the diesel generator fuel for the duration of time that we have for the backup, then I'm sure they've got to have something in plans to find a way that other data centers can take the load.
Because, yeah. Sure, sure.
Commissioner Jane, my name is Bill Lonkaitis. I am with ATPD. I'm the pre-construction manager, consultant for the build. So in this particular building, to answer your question, this is a co-location facility. So when you ask that question in terms of transferring, rerouting, right, a geo-redundancy within data centers, that's more of an enterprise building. So the actual, what we'll call rollover or move from one data center to another data center usually happens within the customers inside that building. So if I go and I take space with Raging Wire and I go buy 50 racks, it is up to me to have the network in place to go, and if that facility fails or there's downtime, that I can reroute that traffic to another geo-redundant data center. So Raging Wire offers the space, the power, the security, the interconnection, but they don't offer another data center as a full package in a network package.
I see. And the other question is, if one of your customers wanted to use 100% renewable energy, do you have partitions? Do you have sub-metering and all of that so that you could offer 100% renewable energy to somebody who wanted to brand as 100% renewable like Apple and Google have done and Microsoft?
I don't know the answer to that one, Paul.
All right, thank you.
It's my turn. So excellent job on the earthquake design. I understand some of that from my schooling, but the thing I was most interested in is, I think the assumption that some of the commissioners have and others might is that the backup generators would be used for at length, which in a serious earthquake situation, you're going to lose network data integrity to the point where having a data center powered up is not going to serve any purpose because they can't communicate with anyone. Also, the grid is unlikely to recover quickly, as we saw in some of the larger earthquakes over the last 20 years. I understand that having that much generation gives you a reasonable length of time for a graceful shutdown, which I think any data center is going to want to have, but it's unlikely it's going to be running for days on backup generators with any significant, providing any significant service to the community or to the customers. The other thing is, as far as the blockiness of the building, I have to agree with Commissioner Jane. Not at the same level. I don't think it's horribly ugly, but I do think it is below the threshold of what can be done in a building of that scale. I'm not asking for rampant artwork and huge changes in dimension or anything like that, but there are mitigations you can apply to the surface of the building to give visual interest that is beyond just the large gray blocks. Hopefully that had gotten some coverage in the architectural review. I know the people in there would normally urge that. Finally, I'm not understanding, I'm still, with the other commissioners here, trying to understand why this building is being singled out. I get a suspicion from the comments being made that it really has nothing to do with the architectural design or anything that happened to that committee. So hopefully we can move through this process and let it get to the next step in a way that people can have some dinner tonight. That's all I have to say. Commissioner Chircuro first, and then Commissioner Casey.
I just wanted to ask, so if you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but do we know who the occupants are going to be? Is it going to help Santa Clara? Because I don't want this data center to help service Nevada and Arizona. Because we become just a block.
I have no idea who the clients are that are going to be coming in here.
I mean, just a suggestion that ideally we would like the data center to, if it is in the city, to help with the needs of the city and its businesses and its infrastructure. So just, I know, I mean, it's like
My
Amazon.
experience has been that the reason why they're building data centers here in the state of California, let's just say in general terms, where we tend to be very expensive. Cost of construction, very expensive. Power, very expensive. The reason why people have requirements for data centers here is because they need to be here. They need to be local. It's latency issues. So I would imagine the reason why we need this data center here is because they are local people needing help.
Right. And I mean, I've worked with Gensler. You can, but I think like to the commission's point, there are surface treatments that you can still choose to. It's an opportunity to showcase some public art. I mean, if the parking structure at San Jose Airport can do it, I think data centers can too.
Understood.
Okay, Commissioner Casey.
So maybe I'd like to follow up on Commissioner Biagini's question. These appeals take a lot of time out of everybody. So I'd like to understand why I'm hearing this. And if there's another agenda besides environmental issue that's being presented here, for example, the project labor, the PLA, this is not the first time I hear this type of appeal on a data center project. In the previous instances, what happens? Because I remember that the appeal was rejected, and I don't think the data centers were required to do EIR. So how does this appeal process, how is this linked to PLA, and have the developer ended up signing PLA because or in spite of this type of appeal? If there, this is a pretty general question, but I like to understand.
I second that.
Okay, if anyone has a educated answer, then I urge them to provide it.
Well, I'm not sure that's a legal question. Perhaps you could conclude
Okay.
your questions of the applicant and do public testimony, and
Um,
then if you have legal questions for me, I'd be happy to answer.
Actually, it's probably outside of the scope of this hearing. So let's move on. I think the next step, if there's no other questions for
I was
the
just going to
developer.
say, when you ask that question, what's before us isn't the issue of PLA. What's before us is a different issue. But I think what's elevating the concerns, I'm not saying the environmental concerns are not valid, but what I am saying is what elevates those concerns is the inability for the parties involved to reach a satisfactory PLA. I've seen it happen time and time again. And delays sometimes help that process along. So there's my version of an explanation
I
of
appreciate
something
it.
that's
Thank
not
you.
in front of us. Okay?
If there's no other questions from commissioners, I think that the rebuttal
I
from
think
the,
we have to open it up to the public.
no, actually it says here rebuttal from the appellant.
No, I'm sorry, Vice Chair. It is in fact now time for public testimony. We
All
will
right.
then have 2 rebuttals after public testimony, if
All
there
right,
is
why
any.
don't you help me out then on the correct process for this, and we will open it to public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
If anyone wishes to speak on this directly, please queue at the podium. Okay,
Now it's time.
so seeing none, I'm entertaining a motion to close the
Well, no,
public.
actually, we need to do rebuttal.
All right, let's do that first then. All right, rebuttal then from the appellant, 5 minutes, I assume, is still the correct number. Okay.
Correct.
I will be brief. Right, so I just wanted to reiterate the standard that a mitigated negative declaration gets. CEQA contains a strong presumption in favor of requiring a lead agency to prepare an EIR. The fair argument standard reflects this presumption. The fair argument standard is an exceptionally low threshold, favoring environmental review in an EIR rather than a negative declaration. This standard requires preparation of an EIR if any substantial evidence in the record indicates that a project may have an adverse environmental effect. As a matter of law, substantial evidence includes both expert and lay opinion based on fact. Even if other substantial evidence supports a different conclusion, the agency nevertheless must prepare an EIR. Thank you.
Motion to close public
Oh,
hearing.
I'm sorry,
No,
pardon
not
me.
yet.
No.
One more rebuttal.
One more rebuttal
Oh,
from the developer.
right.
5 minutes. Like to rebut.
Probably the only thing I'd like to just end with is the fact that we feel that we've gone through the process that the city and the state has laid out for us um, to create a building that will fit and work within the planning and building department's requirements, fire department, city. This is going to be a highly efficient, we think a beautiful and attractive building, but unfortunately, sometimes that is a subjective item. It's up to current codes and beyond. And with the base isolation, they're taking this facility very serious. They want to be here in Santa Clara, and we would like to get this approved. Thank you.
Motion to close public hearing.
Okay, motion is by
Second.
Commissioner Casey and then seconded by Commissioner Biagini.
Motion for the project?
Okay, voice for
Yes.
Commissioner
We got it.
Casey.
Oh, I'm gonna join again. Let's see this, it works again. All right, hold on.
I think
All
we
right,
got your vote.
We got your
We got
vote.
it.
Thank you.
Yes, yes.
And Mr. Chair, might I suggest that now I take this opportunity to address the
you were
comments in
next
the
on my
letter,
list.
just so we don't leave that loose end.
I'll just comment that the public hearing passed, closed with unanimous and 2 abstentions by being recused. I'd like to hear from our city attorney on rebuttals to the comments in the letter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you have a huge stack of paper in front of you tonight. We apologize for that, but it is a necessary evil. The appellant has submitted a total of 4 letters on this project. We have provided written responses, as well as verbal responses at the last meeting, to 3 of those 4 letters. So if you have any questions about any of the written responses we've already provided, I'd be happy to answer them. But it's incumbent on me to not leave this loose end, which is this 4th letter we received at 4:39 today. I would like to ask our environmental consultant, Brianna Bohanek from Circle Point, to come up to the podium so I can tap her knowledge as well. But this won't take very long. I just want to address the 2 points raised by the appellant in this letter. As he said in his rebuttal, if there's any substantial evidence of a fair argument that there will be a significant environmental impact, the city is required to do an EIR. He is correct that that is the legal standard. So the issue before you tonight is, has the appellant provided you with substantial evidence that there's a fair argument for a significant environmental impact? And he raised 2 issues: the battery hazards and that the nitrous oxide emissions were underestimated. Working backwards, the battery hazards, the evidence cited by the appellant in his letter is an April 2019 article at Bloomberg.com. In that article, it describes the fact that there was a fire in Arizona at a energy storage facility, not a data center, but a facility where there were a lot of batteries. That article does not say what the cause of the fire was. That article does not say that lithium batteries are inherently unsafe. What the city did in its environmental document was state that it relied upon the opinion of the Santa Clara Fire Department to determine that this was a safe project, that there would not be a significant environmental impact related to hazardous materials simply from the use of batteries. The city is following state fire code requirements in requiring 2-hour firewalls. There is case authority that relying upon regulatory standards for safety is sufficient for a finding of a less than significant impact. So for instance, there's a 2011 case holding that reliance upon the state building code is sufficient to find that geologic hazards will be less than significant. There's a 2014 case holding that reliance upon FAA regulations is sufficient for a finding that aircraft hazards will be less than significant when siting wind turbines near an airport. Here we are relying upon the state fire code. We are authorized to do that under state law. The only evidence he has provided that reliance upon the state fire code would not be sufficient is an article stating that there was a fire in Arizona. That, in my opinion, does not constitute substantial evidence. The legal standard, I don't need to recite it, you know it. So then that takes us to nitrous oxide emissions. The appellant argues that we underestimated nitrous oxide emissions on 2 grounds. First, that we miscalculated how much emissions Silicon Valley Power is going to be putting out. The appellant submitted data using historical data from SVP derived between 2013 and 2017. Now, as you may be aware, SVP has been moving towards a cleaner mix of energy. And as of January 2018, we became coal-free. Our data is more current than the data used by the appellant. In addition, Ms. Bohanek is going to help me out with this argument about SVP's emissions.
Yeah, so to the point made earlier about back-mid permitting for air pollutants, including NOx, that's the specific emission, pollutant emission that they refer to. So they say the city failed to note that in connection with emissions from off-site generated electricity from Silicon Valley Power. So one of their arguments is that this project should not only look at the direct emissions that would come from backup generators and other sources, but that we should also lump in NOx emissions from Silicon Valley's gas-fired power plants. Those power plants go through their own CEQA review process. Some of them went through the CEC based on the megawatts. Some fall below that threshold and would have done a different CEQA review, not under the CEC. They also have back-mid permits. So those emissions are captured for those individual projects. If we put them into this project, they would be essentially counted twice, which is not appropriate.
So that's the SVP part of their argument. The other part is the commute distance. As Commissioner Jane noted earlier, there aren't a lot of employees on this project. But regardless, they do have to commute, and so there are going to be some emissions depending on how far they drive each day. The city utilized the Cal EEMOD model, as it usually does, California Emissions Estimator Model, to calculate the emissions from this project. It's a widely utilized, widely respected model, and it predicted that the average distance, we used the default commute distance, which was 4 miles in each direction, 8-mile round trip. The evidence submitted by the appellant was the opinion of their expert that, in fact, the average commute distance should be 40 miles, an 80-mile round trip. They assert that we should use as an average that every employee will live further away than Gilroy. And as evidence for this, they provided us with a 2013 article from the Palo Alto Weekly newspaper citing 2011 US Census data about Santa Clara County. So even if you excuse the fact that this is 8 years stale and it's about the wrong jurisdiction, here's what the article actually says. It says that the average travel time in 2011 in Santa Clara County was 24.7 minutes. Now remember, they said we should use an average travel distance, a commute distance of 40 miles. So as I've told you before, I went to law school so I wouldn't have to do math. But nevertheless, I've calculated that means in order to drive 24.7 minutes commute time for 40 miles, you would have to drive an average speed of 97 miles an hour. So it's up to you to decide tonight whether or not the appellant has produced substantial evidence. If it were up to me, I wouldn't call that substantial evidence. I'd call that a joke.
I have a question through the chair.
All right, Commissioner Chiricoro.
I concur, and I've been in this legalities. I do have a question from Circle Point. So what is the threshold to actually do a traffic study?
To do, I'm
A
sorry?
traffic study. So I think
Oh,
there's
traffic.
thresholds of when a traffic study is necessary from,
Yes,
I think it's 160 trips, but correct me.
Yeah, so if you have more than 100 peak hour trips.
And this is 40,
Mhm.
even if we consider that all 40 are commuting at
Yes.
the same time,
Yes.
which this is not, because half of the population of employees are in shifts.
Exactly, yeah, so it'd probably be actually 3 shifts over 24 hours.
Okay, so about 10, 12. Okay, and the threshold for even doing a traffic study is 100 trips?
Yep, just 100 peak hour.
There you go. Okay, just adding to your clarifications.
Okay, Commissioner Casey.
So I hope, I'm assuming that the appellant paid some fee to file this appeal?
That's correct.
Yeah, I hope that appeal fee covered all the staff time that was spent on
It
doing all the
absolutely does not.
which is, in my personal opinion, a real shame. We talked about changing the appeal process, the architectural committee. So in the future, if the new process being proposed is adopted by the council, this type of appeal will go straight to council instead of coming to planning commission. Is that correct?
That was what was forwarded to the council by the Planning Commission at the last meeting. My understanding is it's going to council in about a month.
So I really hope that council will approve that. And it's too bad that the fee will not cover the staff time, but, you know, we here work as volunteers, and this is an hour of my time that I volunteer for the city that I can never get back. So I just feel a little aggrieved.
I'm ready to make a motion.
But
Well,
yes, I'm ready to make a motion.
No, before we do that, I really would like to hear
Okay.
from our environmental consultant.
Oh, okay. I mean,
Yeah, I would like your opinion on the information presented as to validity and concern.
Yeah, my opinion is that the majority of the information that was provided does not show us that there is a potential significant impact that we haven't addressed. We have identified some potential impacts in the document, and we have fully mitigated them. And then there are sort of pieces in here that perhaps intentionally or unintentionally could lead to a misunderstanding of the facts. And I think that we've clarified some of those. So I feel very comfortable with this document as an ISMND, and I think it's appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for, no? Then I'll entertain motions.
I move, it's okay, I move that the Planning Commission deny the appeal and uphold the adoption of the mitigated neg deck and the mitigated monitoring reporting program for the project located at 1150 with an additional condition that the aesthetics, it's not a condition on the MND, but a condition of approval, that the aesthetics include treatment on the facade.
Well, could I suggest you hold that until the second motion, the extra condition?
So there could be two motions?
There should be, yes, one is on the MND, the other is on the architectural review.
Okay, so I'll strike that out, and just to move that we uphold the mitigated neg deck and MMRP, and deny the
Second.
appeal.
All right, so Chair Koo moved and Commissioner Jane seconded. Yes.
I think the text was written wrong, or I didn't quite. It says approve the appeal.
Deny.
just
No,
wanted to make
it says
sure.
deny the appeal.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, that's what I voted, but
Frankly, I
it
would
says
have preferred the word
action on
overrule.
appeal, and it doesn't say to deny the appeal. That's why it's so confusing.
Right, approve recommendation one, which was to deny the appeal. I frankly prefer the term overrule the appeal, but
Yeah,
regardless, the appeal.
I
agree.
read the resolution, that's what I'm reading off of.
Yeah.
And for that,
Okay,
we
I just
thank
want to
you.
clarify
There's a
because
second motion.
that wording there is very confusing.
Oh, I'm sorry,
We have to
guys.
vote on the second
Go
part.
away.
Go. You want to move?
All right, so I'll entertain the second motion.
Uh,
Actually, we're still working on the first one. Sorry.
No, we're done with the
We're done.
first, I
Oh,
think.
done with the first?
Yeah.
All right, good.
Yeah.
You said the MND was good.
Good, we're done with that. Second motion.
Well, I'm moving that we deny the appeal of the architectural review approval, but I'm struggling for how we can add a condition for some sort of aesthetic treatment.
I can help.
Okay.
All right, so we approved the project with an additional condition of approval. So it has no relation to what the Architectural Reviews Committee's approval per se is. We just are approving it as a new project with the additional condition of approval to treat the aesthetics with surface treatment or as deemed necessary by the planning department, but add more of an aesthetic treatment as additional condition of approval.
That's very
in finishes and in,
So that would just be in negotiation with staff, and staff, if they approve it, then it's done, right? It doesn't come back to us or anything.
Correct.
right,
Is that correct?
right. Because
Okay.
otherwise, they've gone through a whole
Because
process of
after all,
years.
even I look good in sunset light. Yeah.
Oh, you do, so.
Assumes facts, not in evidence.
So I have the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
The motion is still yours, Commissioner Jane?
Okay, yeah, I guess.
I was just helping him. Yeah.
All right, so it passes with 2 abstentions as expected. So I assume now there's an additional appeal within 7 days to the city council.
That is correct.
And we can move back to normal agenda. So,
Can I make a comment, Chair?
sure, I think it's appropriate. Go ahead.
Okay, this is a classic case of where we need CEQA reform in the state of California. These extremely low thresholds of impacts that trigger full EIRs are extremely cumbersome and extremely expensive to business in California, and it's a very classic case of why we need CEQA reform. I also want to chide Adams Broadwell because they issued a PRA request to me on a project that I had no idea what it concerned. It concerned demolition of structures at 2201 Laurelwood. This project never came before PC, and I really advise Adam Broadwell to do their homework before they send these PRA requests because they're expensive and cumbersome to the city.
Okay, I guess I can hand back off the chairmanship and fall back up here.
I just remembered through the chair that we were going to respond to how much does it cost for an EIR? It ranges from 200 and up, K,
Okay, yeah.
to do an EIR.
I figured it was high.
All right. I missed all the fun.
Giant sword.
Okay, we moved from public hearing. We will now move on to reports of commission, board, liaison, and committee. So number 1, announcements and other items.
I would like to make an announcement.
Okay, Commissioner Jane?
So yesterday, the Board of Supervisors of the County of Santa Clara declared a climate emergency, and it was unanimous among the supervisors, with Cindy Chavez being absent, but it was 4-0. So that, I think, will actually allow because it's an emergency, will allow the county to move forward on projects with some relief from CEQA because it's an emergency. So I am encouraged by the fact that the Board of Supervisors is taking climate change seriously.
I'd like to add to that announcement since I am very familiar with it, but it also brought forward the need from regional contributions because no entity can do it. So no matter, again, it's a resolution. A resolution is only as effective as its intent. The actual action is what the public speakers, several county representatives, jurisdictions came forward to speak on it, but it also came away with some tangibles. Transportation demand management, electric vehicle charging, and electric, capabilities within buildings. But just wanted to add that as the city, we should be able to assist through our projects and through our potentially even a resolution for the city to help meet the emergency crisis needs, but also just for our own city's needs.
Okay. Any other announcements from anybody else on the commission, staff, or? No?
Staff's announcements have more to do with upcoming agenda items, so I think we can
Okay.
cover that below.
Okay. We will now move on to item number 2, which is the board or committee assignments. Members of the commission will mention their attendance at ad hoc committees or boards they participate on behalf of the planning commission. Seeing none? Okay.
You comment, can staff comment on the cancellation of the meeting in September?
Yes, I was going to do that down below.
Okay.
But now.
All right, we will now move on to item number 3, which is the architectural committee. Last week, I filled in for Commissioner Biagini, and Commissioner Salem and I both went pretty well, and it was, I think, a record time, 45 minutes. I think we got out of there pretty quick. So, so we will. If anything else, do you like to add to that, Commissioner Salem?
No, it's just really encouraging to see a lot of the new development people are actually proactively getting the changes to their home plans and things that normally need discussion. They're already coming in that way. So thanks to staff and other planners for helping them guide into the right path.
Excellent. Okay. We will now move on to item number 4, Commissioner travel, training reports, and requests to attend any trainings.
I have an item.
Okay. Commissioner Jane?
I'm requesting that I be allowed to go to the Getting to Zero Forum conference that will be in Oakland, October 9th through the 11th. And it is the premier global event dedicated to creating zero energy, zero carbon future for the built environment. The Getting to Zero Forum is a solutions-focused event dedicated to zero energy and zero carbon buildings. The 2019 forum will bring together more than 550 leading policymakers, design professionals, building owners, systems manufacturers, commercial real estate representatives, and others working to define a new energy future for the built environment. The registration fees are $750. And so I'm requesting up to $1,000 to attend.
Okay. So are we going to have to put that on the agenda, or can we do that right now?
We just make a motion?
You can make a motion now.
I make a motion to allocate $1,000 for this training.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Commissioner Ikezi. We have a second by Commissioner Kelly to approve $1,000 for the trip to the Getting to Zero.
May I make a friendly amendment? I think it's up to 1,000.
Up to 2,000?
Up to.
Oh, up to 1,000? Okay, sorry, my apologies.
Okay.
Up to 1,000.
I don't have an objection.
Okay. Go ahead and cast your votes now. And that
Thank you.
passes unanimously. We look forward to hearing about that event. Okay. Seeing no other Commissioner travel training reports anymore? Nobody?
We don't have a report to present for you today. However, I would just suggest that the Planning Commission, with the enhanced budget that was provided for the commission this year, think a little bit about trainings, speakers, so that we can tap into those funds in a timely way as well. And I do know that some of the planning commissioners are attending the APA conference. If any individuals are interested, it begins, I think, September 17th in Santa Barbara. So it's an opportunity, if others are interested, to attend, to let us know as well. And we would have to make a motion tonight, essentially, to allocate those funds.
Okay, so is there anybody that would like to attend I will be attending, Commissioner Kelly will be attending. I don't know if anyone else is attending. I know Director of Development, Crabtree, Andrew Crabtree will be there. So if anybody wants to go, I believe we have the budget, so do I have any Anybody that's interested?
Yeah, but
6-hour drive.
I'll be out of the country, damn.
Next year.
Okay.
I do have a clarification for the budget. So I'm an AICP. So I was wondering if the budget could cover the AICP or APA membership that's necessary for maintaining AICP status?
So I don't have clear direction on that. I can talk to
Sure.
some
I
individuals at the
figured.
city who have,
Okay.
they have some direction for city staff
Right.
on that issue. And so I don't know how that applies to commissioners.
Okay, just as a feedback.
Okay. Well, now we will move on to Director of Community Development reports. We will start with item 1, which is Planning Commission budget items, which we already pretty much are discussing.
Sure. So can we move on to item 2, which is
Sure,
upcoming
absolutely.
agenda
Item
items?
2.
Great. So I wanted to just give a little synopsis of a couple items since our last Planning Commission that went to City Council that's of interest to the Commission. So on August 20th at Planning Commission, staff presented a proposal to actually ask for a contract amendment for professional services to evaluate the Tasman East specific plan. Particularly, there is a segment of right-of-way, Calle de Sol, that was proposed with the plan to be formally extended as a street. There were a lot of drivers for that, placemaking, breaking up street grid, so on for the plan itself. There is a logistical challenge to implement that, which is an existence of a pump station that needed to be relocated to facilitate that. So staff has worked on, potential relocation feasibility for the pump station. The developers themselves who are proposing development in the area suggested another alternative that would allow for the pump station to stay in its place, but also allow for placemaking, activation, all the other goals to still be accomplished through a paseo. City Council was presented, it's really just a contract amendment for professional services, but we wanted the council to be aware of what it's intended for. And the council did approve that contract amendment and expressed generally, support for the potential change when it's presented. So that happened on August 20th. On August 27th, which was yesterday, staff presented a table of contents on the City North process, and the City North process is really I would say a framework for looking at some of the development that's happening in North Santa Clara. We have 2 specific plans that are underway right now with Patrick Henry, and then I'll get into Freedom Circle in a second, but also with just a lot of the development proposals that have either been recently approved or are in the pipeline. The City North framework is really intended to kind of bring all of this together from a visionary standpoint of how to accomplish some goals that projects or specific plans individually can't accomplish, and particularly around mobility and how to have mobility kind of function in a cohesive way and maybe in a way that's kind of pushing the envelope a bit. So staff presented that to the City Council as well as, and the City Council had a bit of discussion on that. You probably, if you're interested, should listen to their discussion on it. I think some of the council members are still a bit confused by what this framework is intended to accomplish. So staff will be providing much more information on that. Another item that was presented yesterday was, as I had mentioned at a previous Planning Commission meeting, we have a couple developers that were part of our Freedom Circle specific plan, and they had submitted withdrawal letters to the city from participating in the specific plan. And there were only 3 developers that were participating in the plan. The one developer that's still interested in participating, who really initiated the whole process through a general plan amendment, was Graystar. So we were seeking direction from the council on a few options on how to proceed. And so the City Council did move forward with a recommendation to continue looking at a planning process for a focus area for the general plan, but not to proceed with the specific plan. for Freedom Circle, but to continue to also incorporate the continued processing of the Gray Star general plan application. So I think that was a balance between looking at an application today as well as also looking at it in the context of the fact that it is still really in an office industrial area that may or may not be changing for residential in the future. Thank you all for participating in the joint study session. We will have another one, and an email was sent out to the commissioners because there's a slight date change. The meeting was supposed to happen on Tuesday, September 3rd, but the entire meeting, not just the study session, got moved to Wednesday, September 4th. I believe we have the study session start time beginning at 5 p.m. And that study session will cover the topics of safe parking as well as assisted living.
Quick question
Yes.
about that.
Yes.
Is it going to be just an hour, or are we going to have a little more time and not be constrained by council meetings starting and stuff like that?
I do believe we still have an hour only. However, there is another study session that we are planning for related to short-term rentals and then occupancy criteria in single-family homes, which we know will have a lot of community interest, and we are definitely planning more time for that session to account for all the public comments.
Okay.
5 o'clock on the 4th instead of 6 o'clock on the 3rd.
Correct.
I think we got an email for that too.
Yes, I believe Elizabeth already sent an email out about that.
Yeah.
We are intending to cancel the September 11th Planning Commission meeting. Just the ebb and flow of where projects are at don't really land many projects really on this date. And with all of you participating in these joint study sessions, I think you're going to be seeing a lot of us nonetheless. So, and that's all I have in terms of updates.
So on the next agenda, are we going to have a pretty heavy agenda? Because I know Commissioner Jane had a question in the email, I believe it was yesterday or today. If you would like to elaborate on that, Commissioner Jane.
Well, I think the only thing that I was saying that I thought that today's agenda would be light, and that perhaps I had made a recommendation that when we change conditions of approval for a project, and then they come back to the minutes, the wording of those conditions is not specified there. And I wanted to have a way for us to be able to see the exact wording of those conditions in case there was a typo or something left out of them. So I believe what I heard was that Gloria is really the person who knows all about that. So and wasn't going to be here today, so we postponed that to another time. But I don't believe that's going to be a lengthy discussion. Yeah. So
we'll certainly add that to the 25th agenda.
Yeah.
And yeah, we just wanted to make sure the right staff were present so that you could have a meaningful discussion.
I do have a question about the Tasman East. I was there at the council meeting when they talked about the pump station and the Paseo, and I often question the traffic studies that are done. I mean, there's going to be 4,500 people in that area, and I would like to see multiple traffic studies because I don't always trust the traffic studies that I see.
So as part of the work that's going to be done to analyze this option for Paseo, there is going to be a revised traffic analysis to look at circulation, or at least have, I don't know if necessarily new counts are going to be done, but taking out that as a circulation street for vehicular traffic, that's going to be analyzed and presented as part of the CEQA analysis.
And then I know the city very rarely does one-way streets. I know the only one that I know of is Market and Bellamy. So is that always under consideration?
Staff had looked at an alternative to create a one-way street or a much more reduced, it has to be significantly reduced to meet some of those objectives. However, in recognizing sort of the balance between all the benefits that could be gained from a completely pedestrian or bicycle-oriented Paseo versus retaining the street for one-way traffic, Staff felt there were a lot more placemaking opportunities that could be gained through the Paseo and was recommending the Paseo option rather than exploring the one-way configuration.
Right, but if traffic is so bad,
Correct.
it'll turn out to be a nightmare. Yeah.
We can certainly explore that if that's what the analysis shows us.
Okay, Commissioner Salim.
Yeah, I was looking at the calendar. Is there some reason other than timing it that's currently in place that we couldn't do the study session on the 11th, which would be a canceled day anyway, and take some of the time pressure off?
So with the council, I know with all of you, it's incredibly difficult to schedule a study session. With the council, it's always also very challenging to schedule their time. And that's why for them to have an existing meeting and for us to build off the meeting that they have to be at makes it a lot more feasible or doable. I can certainly request us looking at that, but it will take a big effort
I
for the
see.
schedulers to try and find an
They're here
alternate.
to serve at their whim.
Yes.
All right, Commissioner Cherukuru.
I just wanted to ask, do we know when that last appeal will go to City Council, 3533 Gibson?
We're working on that now. I believe that we'll schedule around the end of October for when it could go to City Council.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will now move on to, you already covered city council actions.
Oh, when you said last appeal, do you mean of the single-family house,
Yes.
Sycamore?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that the applicant has been on hold for so long. Any further delays is only going to add to costs in the end.
Motion
Okay.
to adjourn.
All right, yeah, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting for September 25th? Motion made by Commissioner Ikezi, seconded by Commissioner Biagini. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Have a good one, folks.
Okay.